Voyagers. My name is Aaron Moss. With me is my wife, Michelle Moss. And this is Voyagers Cast, a Headcast Network 20-episode maxi-series podcast where we look at the greatest time travel show of the early 80s, Voyagers. Joining us on this monthly expedition through time will be several of my podcasting friends and fellow Voyagers. Each month we look at an episode of Voyagers and give you our thoughts. So let's take a look and see where we're landing this time.
Green light, kid. We did
it. And welcome to Voyagers Cast, episode number 21. For the final time, I am your host, Aaron, Brotherhead Moss. And as always, joining me is my beautiful wife, Michelle. And
oh, wait. Sorry. Did you say something?
No, I didn't.
I was kind of asleep over here.
And we're here for our final episode of Voyagers Cast. That's right. It's been 21 episodes ago we started this. It's been longer than 2 years since we started doing it, but due to life. But hey, we made it to the end. Last episode, we looked at the final episode of Voyagers, and now we're back with a movie. So in case people are first time listening, why? This is the last episode. Go back and listen to the first episode. But no, we're looking at the TV show Voyagers, which ran from 1982 through 1983 on NBC. About a time traveler that got stuck with a little kid and they went time traveling, fixing things that went wrong, sort of. And as we've talked about previously, the series ran for 20 episodes. It's supposed to be cut sooner than that, but apparently John Eric Hexum, the main actor, wanted to keep it going. So from what I understand, he put some of his own money in to keep the show going longer, and they squeezed out 20 episodes. Somewhere near the end, apparently the suits at NBC Universal, somewhere along there, decided that they wanted to, I'm going to put in air quotes, cash in on the Voyagers' popularity for a show they canceled. And they took 2 episodes and smashed them together and made a movie for it.
That was not a movie.
It was an hour and a half long or so. And
of a recap.
But
not even a recap.
Spoilers. Michelle asked, well, are you sure you want, me to record this with you? Because I've got nothing good to say about it. And I told her, well, you know what? Neither do I. So usually I'm the cheerleader for most of these episodes, even the bad ones I like on here, and both the Starbright project we do. I'm the one that's, there looking at the good points. I'm going to have a tough time doing that this episode. So fair warning, if you enjoyed this episode, write in and let me know what you enjoyed about it. Honestly, you can email us at voyagers@headspeaks.com and let me know what you guys enjoyed about this episode. Or not episode, but this show, I guess we'll call it. So let's go and take a look at it. So what they did was they took the pilot episode and then episode number 12, the Titanic episode, and they kind of mashed them together and filmed some other scenes to pet into it, to make it interconnected and to make it go together well.
Huh.
Was their intention, but as we're going to find out, I think both me and Michelle think they failed at it miserably.
It was just...
So, and again, usually I've watched these episodes at least once, if not more, and Michelle's first time. This is actually the first time both of us watching this, in quotes, movie. So, Michelle, initial thoughts on Voyagers the Unknown.
How do I want to word this? If I was watching this in real time, say that I had watched this through the show when it originally aired, and then hearing that they were going to make a quote-unquote movie, I would have been so excited.
And real quick, let me interject real quick. I say movie. I think it was a made-for-video type movie. I don't think it was like a theater release. I think it was a straight to DVD, to VHS movie. Straight to
so
video
this was
stores.
like the Wish.com.
Yes.
Still, if I was a fan of the show, whatever you want to call it, and I would have found out that they were making something a little extra, I would have been over the moon excited. I personally am not a fan of recap shows. I don't like it. And a lot of times, especially back in the day, they would have those 1 or 2 episodes per season where it was, one of the characters reflecting back on something, and then they do the blah, 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 and then they show the video.
It was basically a way for them to save money.
With filler.
When they need, near the end of the season, they need to fill in some time, fill in an episode. They would take some old episodes and take pieces out of them and put together a little filler episode, a little, not recap episode, but a little flashback. That's what I'm looking for, flashback episode.
And this wasn't even that. This was, let's take parts of an episode. Well, let me back up. For instance, you think I'd be all for this because they played a couple of the episodes that I really enjoyed. And for nostalgia-wise, them playing the Wright Brothers episode, which is still one of my favorites because it kind of introduces you to the whole concept. But I felt like I'm trying to even find words on how to explain this. When you're teaching story arcs to kids, there's this, it almost looks like there's the straight line and then there's an elevation. When you're going up, there's called the rising action. Then you get up to the climax, and then, you have your solution, your solution, your falling action, and then your conclusion. This had none of that. It was, let's just show the episode and then cut out half of it where they went from not knowing someone to now Bog was gonna marry, write a letter and pretend to marry her. It was just bad. It was just really, really bad. Part
of the problem, especially the first part of it, was when they took the pilot episode and they put it together and they sliced together for this movie. They did it out of order and they left scenes out. So yeah, you miss quite a bit. And because originally, after they saved Moses, they jumped to World War I, met Mary Murphy, and then they went back and met the Wright brothers because they realized that the planes weren't invented yet. Well, here they just jumped straight to meeting the Wright brothers, and then they left and met Mary Murphy, and that was kind of where it was kind of odd during that scene where they were talking to Mary Murphy and the pilot that was with her that wasn't flying. The Omni was green, and they're like, Jeffrey's like, oh, I know what's wrong. We need to go to another time zone. And all of a sudden the light turned green and then they leapt out. And in the pilot, that's when they leapt back to Kitty Hawk because they discovered that at that point, originally they discovered that planes weren't invented. So Americans were behind on that. So they had to go back and save the Wright brothers. But in here they did that already. And so when they left from here, they leapt automatically into the ending scene where the pilot and Mary Murphy was fighting against the Red Baron, and Bog had to take over and fight against the Red Baron. So they took it out of order, and it kind of messed up the entire, as you were talking about, the rising arc and climax and all that. It just kind of dumped all over that.
Yeah, it was just bad. And then they had this Cerebro. The
Colossus is what they called it. The machine was labeled.
Yeah, but
what they did, as we talked about, they took 2 episodes, put them together as a movie, and they interspliced with some new scenes they filmed, showing Voyagers HQ and a computer that was controlling it, and this computer was doing a voiceover, trying to tie the segments together, but
even that had no. I get they were trying to go for a robot effect, but it was just bad. And then every once in a while they would try to dub over the original, where the actors' mouths were not moving, but yet there was dialogue coming out of their lips. Or
the actor wasn't on the screen. You could tell it was a different voice.
Yeah. Or just, it was for instance, how do I want to say this? It's kind of I know what I want to say.
I don't know. I think it's kind of like you take a just Japanese movie and dub it over with English for parts of it.
Well, yeah, but
I'm not sure where you're going with it.
But there's also, for instance, like you have your settings set for like one recording, so the tone is one way.
Right.
And then
it wasn't leveled out or equaled out or something.
Yeah, so they didn't match. And so, it might be that all of the dialogue is like this, but then all of a sudden it gets really loud and then it goes back to really soft because it wasn't consistent. It was
right.
Really, really lacking a lot of continuity. And I'm sorry if I am rambling and I'm not making a lot of sense. I am a school teacher and today was the last day of school, and so my brain is scrambled.
And I planned on trying to get some other hosts on with us, but I reached out to our buddy, the Smooth Norwegian Lee, but he had some acting stuff going on, so he wasn't able to join us.
How dare he be working in Hollywood and being really cool and making movies?
And we ended up, again, we played like, well, I want to plan this out and get some people on. And once again, it's, 8 o'clock at night. Michelle's like, well, you want to record that last episode? Sure, let's do it.
It's just been looming. And no wonder why it's been looming, because this is really bad.
Well, I guess this is when I jump in and say something good about it and say what I liked about the show.
Which is, but then they also had really, really bad editing where they are like, oh, we're going to try to make it better. So let's give it new graphics and let's give it some new sound. And when they fall, let's use like the rewind effect and make them look like they're falling differently. There's so much bad about this. Yeah,
they changed these. Oh, when Bog first lands at Jeffrey's building, he just doesn't appear. They show him flying. It looks like he's flying through New York, wherever he's at, or L.A. or whatever Jeffrey's supposed to be from. I think it was New York. And they show him flying through the air, it looks like, before he lands at the building. And then there was the one scene where, I forget which one it was, they were leaving somewhere, and it basically just, they took the landing scene and reversed it and showed him flying up in the air instead of disappearing like they normally do.
It was just... There's so much wrong with this that.
And yeah,
are you sure John Hexum was shot by accident?
I think this came out after he died.
There was no in memory of.
So that's what I'm thinking. I'm getting conflicting information.
And then he must have been rolling in his grave then.
Yes, he probably was. That's why they couldn't get him back to do anything, because he died in 1984. And from what I understand, this came out in 84/85. So.
Poor John Hexum is probably like, could we just leave it alone, please?
But, and yeah, for the time travel scenes, they tried to update that and gave us some, in quotes, cool computer special effects and add some lines into it and some graphics into it to make it a little more
spacey,
hip, a little more spacey, a little more something. But yeah, overall, I think this failed on all accounts.
Failed to deliver.
I was looking at IMDb trying to get some more information on it. There's not a lot of information on this. There was actually a somewhat favorable review on IMDb on this. They gave it 8 out of 10 stars.
Were they high?
So I'm going to read this real quick. It says, not the best, but really good single-shot intro to the series. This is a combination/remake of episodes 1, Voyagers, plus 15, Voyagers of the Titanic. So I guess it's episode 15, not 12. The negative reviews are very uncalled for. So I had to give it this, even up the score at 2+ and 2-. I grant that the special effects weren't fantastic, but that misses the point. If you stand back and look at the big picture, as with most action, adventure, sci-fi, this is about relationship, and consider this is John Eric's first starring role. It's really good for those with eyes to see, unlike the bad reviewers. It surges how like brainwashed people talk about folk being black or white, when scientifically everyone is really different shades of melon brown. So, too, the sickos that say this is Nambla territory are also useful used for perverts.
What?
Those that aren't mindless tools know this is a wonderful gift, specifically of Phineas being the dad Jeffrey never had, and generally him being a hero saving history. And see, it sounds to me more like he's reviewing the actual series and not this movie. Because you don't get a lot of this in this in quotes, movie. I don't see I was trying to find the person that wrote this review, but I don't see a name on it. Oh, there it is. Russ Dave.
Russ Dave?
Back in 2014. Like I said, it sounds like he's doing more of a review of the show itself, because we don't get much of this in this show. Just looking at the reviews on IMDb, most people there's one gave it a 1 out of 10, but most of them gave it 7, 8, 9, 10 stars. Not 10 stars, 7, 8, 9 stars.
Out of what?
Huh?
What do you mean 7 or 8, 9 stars?
Either 7, 8, or 9 out of 10 stars.
What?
And one person gave it a 1 out of 10. And their username is Bat's Breath.
And I wanted to ask that question because I was asked Aaron, I'm like, well, did they like change writers or something? Because in the first couple episodes, like he says Bat's Breath quite frequently. But by the time we end up in the end of the series, you really don't hear that anymore. I know, I found that interesting.
And yeah, I don't know if that was a writer's decision or who decided to cut down on the Bat's Breath, but yeah, they did cut that down as the series went on. And yeah, I'm just looking at it, and it looks like a lot of these reviews are taking the series as a whole and not necessarily just this show. So yeah, one guy says that Voyagers Unknown is a film made from a short-lived but acclaimed Voyager television series. It was acclaimed, but I enjoyed it. But now it's a series I'm surprised Nickelodeon or Disney hasn't picked up. Where does he go? Anyways, down here, they're making a reference to maybe it's Voyagers are Time Lords. And maybe the planet they're referring to is Gallifrey.
Really?
Doctor Who, but that's one person's fan opinion of it. But yeah, like I say, normally our episodes aren't very long. And for looking at it, in quotes, movie, you figure this is going to be longer. It's not. There's not a lot to say about it. Like I say, the special effects, I don't think added anything to it. They changed some of the sounds. They changed the sound of the red light blinking on the Omni. They dubbed in some lines that you could tell was dubbed. It wasn't the characters' voices. It wasn't the greatest anything, in my opinion.
I give it a half Joe Cola.
Over my G.I. Joe show, I give things, I rate the covers on a 1 to 5 Yo-Jo Colas. And my wife gives it half a Yo-Jo Cola. So, and I agree with that. That's probably a good rating for it. I did want to read, on May 25th, I posted on the Voyagers guidebook that the final episode, the one we're doing now, has been delayed about a month. But I said, watch join us when we talk about Voyagers Unknown, our thoughts of the show itself. And there was a couple of comments on here. Sherry Keys said she didn't care much for Voyagers Unknown. It veered too far from the original concept of the series. And then she says the series was excellent. And then I came in and said, well, that's what I was afraid of, but in doing things all the way, I'm going to watch it. And then we did have a reply on here from a Mr. Jim Perriott, who is the creator of the show. He said, I'm assuming it's safe to read this because he posted on a public Facebook group. So I'm assuming it's nothing I can't read. He says he totally agrees. He hated that episode. It was mandated by the studio once they knew they were canceled. It was a cost saver that was comprised primarily of flashbacks to other episodes. So even Jim wasn't a fan of this. Doesn't sound like Jim, the creator of the show,
wanted it to happen.
Yeah, he I don't think he had much of a choice in the say.
Which is really sad because if you're really thinking about it, this is your life's work. I'm not saying that it's his only life's work, but if you're an artist or a professional and you're doing a show, it becomes pretty much like your passion, right?
Right.
And then it would be like telling someone who is painting this beautiful picture and then making them do like a color by number and it being from like Temu or Wish. And, they have no creative control over it because it's just slapped together. And it probably was slapped together in a matter of like a day.
Probably.
With no storyboarding, no real, writing or scripting because there wasn't any. I feel sorry for the gentleman.
Well, I was looking real quick on IMDb for what else that Jim's done, and he wrote on the $6 Million Man, The Bionic Woman, The Incredible Hulk. He wrote some episodes of that. This looks like it was his first created by creator credit, but he also did a show called Hawaiian Heat, which I recall, Misfits of Science, which I've heard of. He also created a show called Forever Night, which is in the 90s, which was a great vampire show. So he's done some other...
That sounds familiar. I never watched it, but I was too young probably.
But yeah, so he's created some other stuff and he's written a lot of stuff.
Well, it's just sad that they would do that to him.
But yeah, I agree that. I'm trying to find something good to say about this movie, but other than it
didn't really even it didn't wrap it up in a nice little package and give you a pretty bow. Like, it didn't even do that. There was no. It's not like they rode off in the sunset and lived happily ever after either. You know what I mean?
Well, they walked off into the sunset after delivering the Mona Lisa back to the.
No, it ended like every other episode.
Well, it was the regular episode. They couldn't film any more, so they did what they had. They didn't really.
So it didn't do anything because
right.
it could have just gone on to the next episode.
Yep, pretty much. Like I said, I've been trying to think of something good to say about it, and I don't have real. I liked Faye Grant, the gal in the World War I part. Again, as I talked about when we originally talked about this so many years ago. I know her best from TV movie V. She was one of the main characters in there. Had Ed Begley Jr. as one of the Wright brothers. And more recently, he was one of the professors on Young Sheldon. So this show had some guest stars. And again, I guess there's nothing else really to say about this movie. I won't call it an episode, but it wasn't really an episode. It was like
it wasn't a recap. It wasn't an episode. It wasn't a movie.
I don't know what it was.
It was like a long ass commercial. It was like a long ass commercial.
Argue. Yeah, pretty much. So let's go ahead and move away from this and let's just talk about some final thoughts of the show itself.
Okay.
I know you got Dory brain, so you may not remember everything, but
I like the show. No, I will say that pushing that away to the side, and I know I've been pretty harsh on a lot of the episodes, but I think about it fondly. It's not one of those things where I could have watched a couple episodes and then moved on and then never wanted to revisit it. But in all honesty, it was very entertaining. I liked Mino. I liked John. I could have done without all of the, female romance crap, but I get it. But all in all, I give it about a 8 Yojo Cola.
Out of, I'm assuming 10?
Out of 10.
Good. So.
And I wish that they would. See, I'm going to say this tentatively.
Correct.
I'm going to say this very timidly. I would love to see this brought back up and done again. It definitely helped fuel my love for history all over again. It makes me think I might want to go watch Wishbone because I like that. I like when you can take something like history and put it into a TV show that's not real and mesh them together. The more I think about it, the more I can say that I really enjoyed the show. So maybe it's even a 9 out of Yojo.
Wow.
Yeah, I enjoyed it that much.
Very nice.
But I'm just really sad that we only got one season.
Oh, it's the same here. I am very sad that we only got one season of this because, I really enjoyed this show. Like I say, I watched it when it first came out and I enjoyed it then. I've rewatched it with you and I've enjoyed every episode one way or the other. I've enjoyed it. I thought it was a great show.
Yeah, even the episodes that were bad, like the episode with Babe Ruth, there were still some good points in it, So it wasn't. Never once did I question my life watching this show like I did the last thing we just watched. But
yeah, no, I definitely recommend anyone that likes time travel shows. Definitely check this show out if you haven't done so yet. You can probably skip this TV movie they made, but
unless you're, wanting to torture yourself.
Like I said, unless you're a completist like myself. But yeah, I really enjoyed the show. I'm glad we rewatched. I'm glad that you liked it. I wasn't quite sure because again, this came out in 1982.
Yeah,
it's a product of its time, but I enjoyed watching it. Like I said, there were some problems with it overall. I still think that they should. If they were to redo it, they need to give it a reason as to why time's messed up. Because Jeffrey from the future, where Bog was at, he knows what time was supposed to be like. So it seems like something caused time to get kablooey.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I liked the show so much is because wasn't the emotionally charged drama, even though they tried to be, because there was, Jeffrey could be a little bit whiny and, no, Bob, no. But in all honesty, like, I like family shows. I am not a drama seeker when it comes to TV shows. I'm not a suspense. I'm not any of those things. I like watching my family. I like watching my comedy. I like watching my sci-fi or fantasy. That's pretty much it. So I like these kind of shows. I like the fact that we can watch it in our living room and not worry about if our kids are walking through the thing. It's not, I mean, I say it's not sexually charged, but, maybe in the 80s that was a little bit much. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you think about it,
right.
The level of PDA that is shown on TV nowadays versus back then is a lot different level.
Right. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Would you want to see them reboot it?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me finish my question.
Okay.
Reboot it like with a totally, new cast, just redo it from the beginning? Or would you like to see more like Quantum Leap where it's a sequel to this?
I would like to see them redo it from the beginning. Because I had a lot of questions about, like, Bog. The whole pirate getup.
Right.
And, there's a lot that was left unsaid. And I feel
as far
like...
as the pirate getup, he came from being a pirate. Just like I'm wondering if in the Titanic episode, the other Voyager they met, she was just more like a pilot from early days of piloting. So I wonder maybe she came from that time frame.
But they all came from that same school.
Right.
Like, how did they pick and choose these people? Did they die? Like, what if in their time frame they died, and instead of going to heaven or hell, this is kind of like their purgatory?
Very well could be. Again, we don't get these answers, so...
And that would be a kind of a neat setup for a new show is, because you've been an idiot on Earth, maybe, this was your way of
redeeming
yourself is by setting what was wrong right.
Right.
That could be a really good premise.
Yes, I thought maybe they took them like right before they died and brought them into the Voyagers Academy. They were looking for certain types of people, but again, that's one thing we never really got answered about how they got picked. And
yeah, I think that could be a really cool premise for starting a new show.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing either way, either rebooting it from the beginning and answering all these questions, or maybe picking it up, so many years later, and Jeffrey, if they could bring Mino back in, and Jeffrey is like an elder at the Voyager Council or whatever, and he's, assigning a new jobs to new Voyagers or whatever. I think that would be an interesting take also.
Question.
Yes.
Would Mino have to wear the red and white shirt?
Part of want to see like in the robes and stuff, but yeah, no, he would need to be in the red and white shirt. It aged with him. But yeah, I think, like I said, I enjoyed what we got, but I think it could be a lot better, if they made some tweaks, gave us a little bit more history on the backstory of the Voyagers, explain how, Jeffrey's clothes could change with him, could grow with him when he got older. How they weren't quite, he's been traveling for I don't know how long, and his clothes didn't look as grubby as they should have, never being washed. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing either a reboot or a continuation. I would be fine either way. I would like to see something done with Voyagers because, again, it's time travel is still a very viable TV format. I mean, they just had Quantum Leap, which only lasted 2 seasons, but they had that Travelers show, or what was that one that we watched? Was it Travelers?
Yeah, Travelers.
Travelers on Netflix, and there's been a lot of other time travel shows and movies. So
Every time I turn around, you're watching a new time travel something on TV.
But yeah, so I think Voyagers is ripe for them to reboot and bring back to our televisions. I would love to see that.
And I like the idea of bringing it to the younger generation.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of like time travel-y stuff for the younger generation. I know our son likes watching that kind of stuff too. So, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting, and I just feel like this generation, the idea of history is kind of lost on this generation. But then again, like, I don't think we give this generation enough credit either. You know, if it's done right, it could be really interesting, very engaging. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, we both said, this would be perfect, right for a reboot. I mean, I think if they did it right, they could aim it like this one here was aimed at younger. Again, I was 12 when this came out, and I think I was right in the peak demographic for it. I like time. This one of the things that got me into time travel, action. It's just, it's,
a kid that you could relate to.
One of the main characters, was a kid around my age that I could actually relate to. It had a lot of guest stars in it that at the time I didn't know who any of these people were, really. I knew Eddie Begley Jr. He was one of the few, I think, at the time. Because this was before V, so I didn't know. I forget her name now. But I had Jonathan Frakes in an episode, but this was before Star Trek Next Generation. So I didn't know a lot of these people when I was 12, but I enjoyed the series. I thought it was good then, and I'm enjoying it now. So any other thoughts on the series as a whole?
I just wish there was more of this kind of thing for kids nowadays. You know, a lot of kids nowadays, they're not really watching TV. In all honesty, they're watching like YouTube Shorts or, TikTok or something like that. So I think it's going to be interesting as this generation, especially like our son's generation, grows up to see what type of entertainment.
Right.
Because even like our daughter watches more YouTube and she's 16. And then she watches television. And I don't know where television is going to go. If you think about it, if you really give it a good thought, because a lot of these kids are watching influencers. They're not watching. It's not like us in our generation where we knew we had to be sitting in front of the TV at 6 p.m. in order to watch our favorite TV show because we didn't have it recorded or it wasn't on demand, or it wasn't streaming. So if you didn't catch it right there on the spot, you had to pray that you were going to catch it on rerun somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you had to be there when it was on, or I hope you could find it sometime down the road, but never wasn't guaranteed.
And if you had to go to the bathroom, you better do it during commercial, because if you came back and you missed something that was very pivotal, you couldn't go back and rewind it.
Yeah, you missed it.
You couldn't go on the internet and look and research it, or our son's always, I think that there's going to be a new episode, and he can go and check the internet to see what date is going to come up or what new sequel or whatever the case may be. Like our son's research skills, if you think about it, is far, far past anything we were at when we were at his age. He's in 3rd grade. He'll be 4th grade, and he knows how to research better than we did at high school level.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's one thing that whatever ill the internet may have, I mean, that's one good thing about computers and the internet is, it's teaching kids to do a lot of this stuff a lot sooner.
Yep. And if they're interested in something, they seem to be more, they're more in tune to go and just look it up and read about it than we ever were.
Right.
Though then again, they just want to watch stupid videos. Like, are my 7th graders watching this thing called Skibbity Toilet? And if you haven't looked it up,
don't.
It's a face in a toilet, and it says Skibbity Toilet, and it's the dumbest thing ever. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that they're really watching. So, which again makes me wonder, what is TV going to look like when they're the ones that are in charge? I don't know.
It's a scary thought. I haven't thought about that, but that's a scary thought. Anything else you want to say about Voyagers?
No, just thank you, John Hexum, for your performance, and thank you, Mino, and thank you to the writers, and thank you to all the people who spent time and effort into this show. It was very enjoyable. I am glad that I watched it. I would highly recommend it to anybody who is looking for something to watch that's wholesome, and we're going to have to find something new to podcast about because this has now came to an end. I'm sorry it came to a really horrible end. And I wish we would have done the actual ending of the show first and talked about how amazing the show was, and then had our own show on this, like an after show. Because I feel like we're
that's pretty much what this is an after show.
Yeah, but
last issue was the last episode of the actual show, and now we're just saying farewells and goodbyes. But speaking of which, I do want to give some special thanks to people that's either been on the show. Ben Avery, Gina De Rios, who is one of the admins or creators of the Voyagers guidebook on Facebook. Thank you for all your support there and for coming on the show, the episode we had you on. I think we had Ada McQueenie, our guest star from over on our Starbright Project show. He was on an episode. Lee Fillingness was on for a while, our Norwegian smoothness himself. So I want to thank you guys very much for appearing on the show. And I'm sorry we couldn't get you guys on more often, but life and just we end up recording these things at 9, 10 o'clock at night.
In California time.
And we're on California. Most of you guys are on the East Coast, so it's hard to
coordinate.
Get everyone on like we want them to. So I also want to thank everyone on the Voyagers guidebook that either liked or commented on any of the posts I made for this show or the Starbright Project show. I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you guys.
And we appreciate you guys. Sorry about that. And also the people over on the My Head Speaks Facebook group or any place else I've posted links to this. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate you guys and your supports. And if you want to hear more from us, we still have our Starbright Project show. Michelle and I are doing with our Australian guest, Ada McQueenie. We're still doing that. It's up in the air. Originally started off with me and Michelle and I. Michelle being the first time viewer and me being a long time fan of the show. But then they had the new series that came out that kind of thwarted those plans. So right now, we're doing a mixture of both the new episodes and the new series and the old series. So definitely check that out. We may have to start something else. I'm not sure yet. We'll talk about it and see. But I've got my other podcast, My Head Speaks, G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, the Task Force X, and the Starman Adventure Show. Definitely check out my other shows. Let me know what you think about them.
Let Aaron and I know what you guys think about our show, and if you have anything else that you might like to see or listen to us watch and record about. But on that case, we're going to check our Omni just one more time, see if the light is green. Hopefully it is.
No, it looks like it's still red.
Bat's breath.
If you want to learn more about the Wright brothers, Eddie Rickenbacker, and the early days of flying, take a voyage to your nearest public library. It's all in books.
Thank you for listening. This has been Voyagers Cast, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. All copyrights belong to respective owners, and no copyright infringement is intended or implied. We're just a huge fan of time travel shows, and Voyagers in particular. Be sure to join us monthly as we watch where Phineas and Jeffrey land next. And if you enjoy this show, check out the other shows on the Headcast Network. The first week of the month, we have Head Speaks and the Starbright Project. Head Speaks is where I talk about comic books, TVs, movies, books, anything geeky. The Starbright Project is where Michelle and I look at another great time travel series, Quantum Leap, and then we'll talk about it. The second week of the month brings you G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, and this show, Voyagers Cast. Over on my G.I. Joe show, we look at the G.I. Joe comics and cartoons from the late 80s. The third week of the month, we drop both Task Force X and Retrospect to the 80s. Task Force X is a show that looks at the Suicide Squad and Checkmate books from the late 80s. Retrospect to the 80s, surprisingly enough, is a show where Michelle and I, and possibly some guests, look back at what we think is the greatest decade there was, the 80s. Finally, the fourth week of the month, I release the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour and Bravo Team. Starman Manhunter is a show where I look at the Will Payton Starman and the Mark Shaw Manhunter books, both from the late 80s. Yes, I have a time period. Bravo Team is my sister show to the G.I. Joe team, or maybe brother show, where we look at anything else G.I. Joe related. We'll be back next month to join our friends Phineas and Jeffrey as they leap into, well, the unknown. Until then, remember, may your landings always be soft
And your lights always be green.
kids give me a page.